Death was not anticipated. John kept everyone's spirits up that morning by making jokes with Henry Winkler. However, something changed at 3 p.m. He continued to perspire and appeared pale and worn out. He struggled through situations that the team saw. Chaos broke out at 4 p.m., when he eventually passed out. Providence St. Joseph Medical Center was the first place they took him to. In a terrifying turn of events, it turned out to be the hospital where he was born. He was misdiagnosed by the doctors. What followed was truly devastating. On September 17, 1948, John Ritter was born in Burbank, California, at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. It is ironic that 54 years later, he would pass away in that similar hospital. He came from a family of showbiz royalty. Tex Ritter, his father, was a movie star and a superstar in country music. Dorothy Faye, his mother, was also a Western actor. John and his older brother Tom grew up in a luxurious mansion near Toluca Lake, surrounded by the industry. John was always conscious of his brother's difficulties because Tom had cerebral palsy. Tex supported John's decision to pursue acting even though he had hoped he would pursue a career in law. In a lovely turn of events, John's first significant part came on The Waltons, his dad's preferred program. John received the call that his father had passed away in January 1974 while that show was being filmed. Only one day had passed since New Year's. On film he was a preacher, but on the inside he was a weeping father. He demanded that his sequences be completed that day. His emotional honesty in all of his subsequent roles would be shaped by that tragedy. However, life had already delivered him a severe blow before. When John was a teenager, something flew through the glass of the car he was riding in and hit his right eye. He was permanently damaged as a result. In that eye he lost his central vision. He could only see in the corner of his eye. Although he never discussed it much, it had an impact on him every day. However, you wouldn't notice on screen. To make up for it, he changed his expressions, timing and movement. He was later referred to as the world's finest physical comedian by Don Knotts. Knowing what he was up against meant much more. Every ounce of slapstick and every pratfall on three's business. He had poor vision and was doing all of this. His skill was all the more astounding because of his concealed injury. Surprisingly, John had no intention of becoming an actor. He was elected president of the student body and received the most votes at Hollywood High School. He desired a career in politics. He attended USC with architecture as a minor and psychology as a major. However, then, he enrolled in Nina Foch's acting class. Everything altered as a result. He received a BFA in drama after changing his emphasis to theater. He continued after that. He joined the Harvey Lembeck Comedy Workshop and received instruction from the renowned Stella Adler. While his father was entertaining American troops in Germany, he even traveled throughout Europe, performing in theater productions in England, Scotland, Holland, and Germany. The similarities were striking. However, there was a ridiculous game show right before the acting classes, before college, and before everything else. John joined the dating game in 1966, when he was only 18 years old. He was not yet well known. Despite not even attending acting school, he won the prize, a trip to Lake Havasu, Arizona, because he was endearing and humorous. His debut appearance on television obviously had an impact. He enrolled at USC shortly after, and managed to enroll in that transformative acting course. At the time, that game show might have appeared insignificant, but it marked the start of a television adventure that would impact millions of people. In his early acting career, John focused on making wise decisions and developing steadily. In 1970, he made his television debut as a student protester on Dan August. Burt Reynolds and Norman Fell, who would go on to play Mr. Roper on Three's Company, were stars of the show. John was already making an impression in this small society. He quickly secured recurrent parts, such as Reverend Fordwick on The Waltons, and continued to appear on major television programs. The Streets of San Francisco, Kojak, Medical Center, The Bob Newhart Show, and MASH. Each component revealed a distinct aspect of him. He was theatrical, serious, and humorous. He was good at whatever the role required. The Mary Tyler Moore Show followed. It was a large one. Once more he portrayed a minister, but this time on an era-defining comedy show. Casting directors and producers had noticed by then. Not only was John getting lucky, his range was being demonstrated. Filming The Waltons in 1974 was one of the most tragic times of his early career. John was mid-shoot, and his father had recently died. Despite his grief, he continued to film. The filmmaker proposed to halt the production. John, however, refused. He was always told by his father that the performance had to continue. Because John was in actual suffering that day, his performance was all the more impactful. The entire cast, particularly Richard Thomas, who portrayed John Boy, came together in support of him. John worked with intense emotion and great professionalism after that encounter. John's career in film expanded along with his television work. He co-starred with Ryan O'Neal and Burt Reynolds in Nickelodeon in 1976. While that film was being made, he was already trying out for Three's Company. He collaborated with Jenny Sullivan on Breakfast in Bed in 1977. He also portrayed President Chet Roosevelt in the political parody Americathon in 1979. He started co-hosting the United Cerebral Palsy Telethon with his brother Tom about the same time. This dedication, which lasted for 15 years and meant a great deal to him, demonstrated that his priorities had not changed despite his popularity. He continued working in both film and television, something that few performers are able to do with such ease. John had to compete for the part of Jack Tripper when ABC chose to create Three's firm. Among the more than 50 actors who tried out was Billy Crystal. Because they felt John's portrayal of the character was too feminine, the network nearly awarded it to someone else. They even thought about replacing him, but ABC's Fred Silverman had faith in him. He noticed something that others missed. John's timing and physical humor were unparalleled. Test audiences adored him, and he remained in the part. The history of television was altered by that choice. John had watched Chevy Chase and Dick Van Dyke to learn about physical comedy. He acquired the ability to move, trip and fall, and add humor. For that reason, Jack Tripper will always be remembered. However, Three's business hardly ever aired. The initial pilot failed. ABC detested it. Joyce DeWitt remained in the role of Janet, while Suzanne Lanier took Chrissy's place. Although it was improved, the second edition was nevertheless unsuccessful. Fred Silverman was going over audition videos once more the day before filming was scheduled to start. He attended the audition for Suzanne Summers, having seen her on The Tonight Show before. She hadn't even been given much thought. Ironically, she was on the verge of giving up acting after surviving a terrible near crash on a trip, but she still attended the audition. Her easygoing attitude was just what the show needed. Filming started the following day when Silverman called at the last minute to cast her. Three's Company caused a stir in America when it debuted in March 1977. The main character of the show was Jack Tripper, a straight man who pretended to be gay in order to share an apartment with two unmarried women. Although it was a straightforward setup, the concept was absurd at the time. Networks were torn between panic and laughter. Jack had to pretend to be the innocuous gay roommate in order to survive under the show's old-school prude landlord. Stereotypes were reinforced, and the humor now seems awkward. The majority of the jokes were based on dread, as critics noted, fear that Jack may be gay after all. Norman Fell's character, Mr. Roper, was known for his clumsy and stiff jokes. Later, Don Knotts played Mr. Furley, who many believed was secretly gay, though the program never stated it aloud. Despite all of its shortcomings, the series tended toward silliness rather than brutality. Strangely enough, the show stood out because of the same thing that frightened the networks. Viewers were unable to turn away. It was audacious. It was not the same. It also happened at a time when attitudes, relationships, sex, and identity were changing in American society. Behind the scenes, however, things weren't quiet. The vivacious blonde Chrissy Snow, played by Suzanne Summers, was dissatisfied with her salary by season 5 in 1980. Each episode brought her $30,000, and shared John Ritter's desire for $150,000. She also requested 10% of the show's earnings. ABC made her an additional $5,000 offer. It all fell apart at that point. The network came up with an odd answer. Even yet, Summers would only make brief appearances in episodes. She pretended to call her roommates from her mother's Fresno house while filming brief moments by herself. Her co-stars no longer shared a set with her. Special colored scripts were given to Ritter and Joyce DeWitt so they would know when to avoid her. It became intimate. She made the argument public, which upset Ritter. For more than 30 years, DeWitt didn't communicate with Summers. The friendship had vanished. Ritter and Summers barely got back together shortly before he passed away in 2003. Ritter's talent, however, was undeniable in spite of the mayhem. He had previously received nominations for Golden Globes in 1979 and 1980, as well as Emmys in 1978 and 1981. However, he eventually won both in 1984, the last season of the show. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a TV Comedy or Musical, and the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy. He was a household name by that time. He was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that same year. They were the first father-son team to have stars in various genres because his father, country music artist Tex Ritter, also had a star. ABC launched a spin-off called Three's a Crowd in 1984 because they weren't ready to let go of Jack Tripper. Vicky, Jack's girlfriend at the time, had a judgmental father who constantly got in the way of their relationship. The show, however, failed. There were just 22 episodes. The way it obliterated the past infuriated the fans. Chrissy, Janet, Terry, and even the landlords were not mentioned. The only person who briefly appeared was Jack's friend Larry. It was criticized harshly. Jack and his girlfriend's father's arguments seemed to be repeated in every episode. If the network desired more, Ritter insisted on a complete season. ABC only provided half. He turned to leave. Entertainment Weekly described it as a classic example of how to ruin a popular show years later. Amidst all of this, Ritter made an unexpected attempt. He provided the voiceover for the animated movie The Flight of Dragons in 1982. Despite not being a big hit, it slowly grew in popularity thanks to HBO and TV reruns. Ritter portrayed the man who changes into a dragon, Peter Dickinson. In one take, he captured the dramatic sight of metamorphosis. Slowly his voice changed from human to beast, without pauses. Fans of animation are still talking about that performance. According to one director, it carried the same emotional weight as Robin Williams's Aladdin, which came out 10 years later. By 1987, Ritter had made a comeback to television with Hooperman, a half-hour program that blended comedy with genuine drama. Critics created the term dramedy because they were at a loss for what to describe it. Ritter portrayed Harry Hooperman, a police officer who inherits a building of apartments and a temperamental Jack Russell. The program was innovative. There was just one camera format utilized. Later, something like Modern Family and The Office would become popular. Mark Hamill and Don Cheadle were among the guest stars. Ritter received additional Golden Globe and Emmy nods for his performance. In addition, he received a People's Choice Award. Later, ABC would acknowledge that it was a mistake to cancel Hooperman. It wasn't fast enough, but viewers enjoyed it. Ritter continued to work after Three's Company, but he faced a significant challenge. It was impossible to forget Jack Tripper. He was supposed to play clown and constantly knock over things. Ritter was aware that he needed to change the norm. He played a sad writer on the verge of self-destruction in the 1989 film Skin Deep. It was gloomy, but humorous. It was a daring In 1990, John Ritter's career took an unexpected turn. He entered the tumultuous world of Problem Child, leaving behind the silly charm of Three's Company. Ritter portrayed Ben Healy, a kind man who takes in a youngster named Junior, who ends up being a complete nightmare. The majority of people are unaware that the film was inspired by a real-life incident. According to a story in the Los Angeles Times, a youngster was so disturbed that even animals were terrified of him. Universal changed the original script, which was intended to be a dark adult satire, to a children's comedy. Critics detested it. Audiences nevertheless turned up. Despite only having $11 million budget, the movie brought in $72.2 million worldwide. Audiences were captivated by Ritter's gentle monologue in which she vowed to adore Junior no matter how awful he got. It was sufficient to approve Problem Child 2, the following year. When Ritter came back, the franchise took off. There was an animated series, a third movie without him, and even a Turkish version in 1995 called Zubçıkta. Ritter maintained the momentum in 1992, in two quite distinct comedies. The first was the tumultuous film Noises Off, which told the story of a theater ensemble disintegrating behind the scenes. Carol Burnett and Michael Caine were among the many celebrities in the cast. Ritter and Christopher Reeve portrayed an incompetent actor enmeshed in the chaos. Despite spending $12 million, the film only made $2 million, yet it developed a cult following. It featured Ritter at his funniest without going too far, according to one reviewer. He made another change in direction that year with Stay Tuned. He portrayed a couch potato who, after striking a bargain with the devil, finds himself in a perverse TV reality. His charisma from real life helped sell the ridiculous comedy. He even briefly reverted to his former Three's Company persona. The last scene, which was set inside one of their music videos, included Salt and Pepper. Despite the film's poor box office performance, critics commended Ritter for his enthusiasm and timing. In 1996, Sling Blade followed. The others were nothing like this. Ritter portrayed the quiet gay manager of a dollar store named Vaughn Cunningham, in a tiny village in the South. Unlike his previous roles, this one was silent. Billy Bob Thornton, who collaborated with Ritter on Hearts of Fire, wrote and directed the film. Ritter got the role thanks to their connection, but it wasn't simple. Tension arose on set as he changed his appearance for the part. He even quarreled about the proper way to style his hair. However, he changed as the cameras started rolling. Ritter remained motionless and silent in one scene. Thornton kept the shot while he simply stood there. It was because the movie altered casting directors' perceptions on Ritter and earned an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. Television still had a place for him, even though he was no longer only a humor fan. Ritter had started a political sitcom called Hearts of Fire on CBS back in 1992. He portrayed John Hartman, a Republican aide who develops feelings for Markie Post's leftist correspondent. In addition to having clever writing, Billy Bob Thornton had a supporting role in the show. However, the network made alterations after the first season. The location was shifted from Washington, D.C., to a tiny village in the South. Ritter's persona changed from insider in politics to proprietor of a newspaper. The shift was unsuccessful. By season 3, ratings had fallen from over 20 million to about 10 million. One episode remained unaired after the show terminated in 1995. Earth, Wind and Fire's original theme tune was appropriate for a program about friction and passion. Ritter then made an unexpected appearance on Ally McBeal in 1998. In 2 episodes, he portrayed the endearing and sentimental character, George Madison. It was a brief, yet memorable role. Ritter received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Guest Actor for his ability to combine humor with grief. Although he didn't win, the nod placed him on par with William Shatner and Woody Harrelson. It served as a reminder to everyone of his true talent. By the year 2000, his career had completely changed to voice acting. He took on the voice of the large red dog, Clifford. Children who were unaware that he had ever appeared on a comedy were his new audience, brought in by the PBS animation. For more than 60 episodes and a feature film, his soft voice gave the character life. Ritter was nominated for 4 consecutive Daytime Emmys for the role. On October 16, 1977, actor John Ritter wed actress Nancy Morgan. After nearly 2 decades of building a life together, they produced 3 children. Tyler a few years later, Carly in 1982, and Jason in 1980. At home, they were more than just a family. The 3 of them co-starred in the television film The Dreamer of Oz in 1990. Was Jason's first acting role as a child. They appeared to be a contented Hollywood family to the outside world. However, things weren't quite as ideal behind closed doors. After separating in 1993, they formally filed for divorce in 1996. Nevertheless, they remained close and co-parented their kids amicably. Nancy also had a career of her own, working with Italian actor Terence Hill and appearing in movies like Grand Theft Auto. In 1990, while working on a script for the comedy Problem Child, John met Amy Yazbek when he was still married to Nancy. The link was made instantly. This new friendship began to develop despite the fact that his marriage was disintegrating. They continued to collaborate, first in Problem Child 2, and then in a Cosby Show episode from 1991, where Amy portrayed the expectant wife of John. Their on-screen narratives had a strangely realistic sense of timing. John played Amy's estranged husband on Wings, a sitcom, in 1996, right before his divorce was formalized. Their professional relationship eventually developed into a romantic one, and they fell deeply in love. John and Amy were married on September 18, 1999, at Wilmington, Ohio's Murphy Theater. That place wasn't just any old place. Charles Webb Murphy, the former owner of the Chicago Cubs and Amy's great-great-great-uncle, constructed the theater. The wedding took place on September 11, 1998, just over a year after the birth of their child. At the age of 18, that child, who was born Stella, transitioned and became Noah Lee Ritter. John passed away on September 11, 2003, Noah's 5th birthday, leaving behind a mixture of happiness and sorrow that would always be associated with that day. John's involvement with the United Cerebral Palsy Foundation was extensive. John never viewed his older brother Tom Ritter, who had cerebral palsy, as weak. He once expressed his opinion that Tom was overindulged by his parents. John thought his siblings should be encouraged to be strong. He showed him the wiffle ball game, and urged him to get back up after each fall. That conviction was successful. John became an actor, and Tom went on to earn his legal degree. Tom worked as a TV producer in the 1980s and co-starred with comic Jerry Jewell on UCP's telethon. That same telethon was later presented by John, who raised almost $17 million for the cause in a single weekend. The irony remained. In the 1979 movie Americathon, John acted as president and organized a massive telethon to save the country. He was doing something very similar in real life. Despite growing up around cameras, John never pressured his kids. He expected them to work hard and provided them with guidance and assistance. At the age of 10, Jason, his eldest child, began performing with his father. He has performed in more than 100 roles as of 2025. She even received a nomination for an Emmy for Parenthood. Become an actor as well. Carly chose to pursue music in a different way after being influenced by their grandfather Tex Ritter. Additionally, Noah, the youngest, mostly avoided the limelight. Although each child followed their own path, they all carried a bit of their father's soul with them. On the set of 8 Simple Rules, September 11, 2003, started off like any other day would. The second season was being filmed by John. As a guest star, Henry Winkler recalled John's humor and ability to lift everyone's spirits. The two had their final conversation at lunchtime. John managed to smile despite appearing a little strange, sweaty and exhausted. He took Kaylee Cuoco aside that day, sat her down and told her, "I want you to know that I love you." She returned the statement, "That's all." In response, he hugged her. Nobody was aware that it was farewell. Around 3 p.m., John began to feel worse during a practice. He reported feeling queasy, sweating more, and having a constricted chest. He was requested to dash across a room and jump over a bed in a humorous physical scene by the director, Robbie Benson. John, however, was having trouble. He was having trouble breathing. Sensing a problem, Benson lowered the intensity of the scene. They hugged when John thanked him. Nobody knew that John was experiencing a different kind of heart attack. An aortic dissection was afflicting him. A rupture in the body's biggest artery's wall. It is uncommon, hazardous, and difficult to identify. Things had gotten worse by 4 p.m. John was clearly in discomfort. The crew went into a frenzy. Later, Cuoco claimed to have witnessed mayhem and heard yelling. John was crumbling in front of everyone just 6 days before he turned 55. In addition, Noah's 6th birthday fell on that day. What was supposed to be a happy day became something they will all remember. They hurried him to Burbank's Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. In an odd turn of events, it was the same hospital where John had been born on September 17, 1948, and it was only a few minutes away. Around 5 p.m. they arrived and he was still conscious. He continued to talk about the constriction in his chest while throwing up in agony. An EKG was performed by the doctors, but it revealed nothing obvious, believed it to be a heart attack. At approximately 6 p.m., John's health deteriorated. His blood pressure fell, fluid began to flood his lungs. His heart pounded. The doctors adhered to the protocol for heart attacks. They implanted a balloon pump and gave him blood thinners. However, those remedies were inappropriate for the actual situation. The very things that were used to save him might have made it worse, according to a Yale cardiac surgeon. By 7 p.m., doctors performed another EKG, but no one ordered a basic chest X-ray that might have revealed the tear. It appeared worse. Though it was too late, they hurried John into surgery. The damage was already done. John Ritter passed away on September 11, 2003. His age was 54. 3 episodes had previously been finished by ABC, however the main actor was no longer in the series. The crew and actors were devastated. Executives at Disney and ABC were forced to make difficult decisions behind the scenes, both emotionally and commercially. High-level negotiations started shortly after Ritter's funeral. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, had a quick idea. He recommended that Kate, played by Katie Sagal, be portrayed as pregnant. His intention was to give birth during the May sweeps to increase viewership, but the backlash was harsh. Both President Susan Lyne and Chairman Lloyd Braun of ABC Entertainment were appalled. They gave it a name, unimaginably exploitative. In retaliation, Eisner charged that they were behaving elitistically. The argument was raucous, passionate, and intimate. The idea of getting pregnant was ultimately abandoned. In November 2003, the show returned after a 2-month hiatus. Goodbye, a 1-hour special, was the return episode. It was an homage to Paul Hennessy, played by Ritter. The live audience was no longer used in the presentation. To fit the somber tone, it was shot in silence. They cast seasoned actresses, Suzanne Pleshette and James Garner, as Kate's parents, in order to continue the tale. David Spade, who played Kate's nephew, also joined. The show was able to survive for 2 more seasons, thanks to these adjustments. However, things were never the same without Ritter. ABC's reaction to his passing became a prominent illustration of how networks deal with unexpected catastrophes, when emotion and profit intersect. John Ritter's wife Amy Yazbek and his 4 children filed a large lawsuit on September 3, 2004, 1 year after his death. They sought $67 million from 2 medical professionals, Matthew Ludish, a radiologist, and Joseph Lee, a cardiologist. Ritter's anticipated future earnings from 8 Simple Rules plus other performing work he would have done were the source of the figure. Moses Leibovitz, their attorney, didn't mince words in court. This was obviously malpractice, he said. Leibovitz contended that on the evening Ritter arrived to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, Dr. Lee committed a number of grave errors. He claimed that Lee failed to obtain a complete medical history, failed to order a chest X-ray, and employed a balloon pump, which exacerbated the situation. Ritter was initially misdiagnosed with a heart attack, according to the family. Then the physicians believed it to be pericardial tamponade. Before this case even went to trial, however, the true problem was a massive ascending aortic aneurysm with significant dissection. 9 other medical groups have already reached settlements with the family totaling more than $114 million. A $9.4 million payout from the same hospital where Ritter passed away was one of them. But 1 month after losing her spouse, Amy Yazbek continued to fight in court. In October 2003, she established the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. She wished to prevent any other family from experiencing what hers had. The goal was straightforward but crucial: to raise awareness, conduct research, and educate people in order to avoid aortic dissection-related deaths. The foundation has expanded over the years. Since 2010, it has contributed to the funding of Deanna Milowicz's John Ritter research program in Houston. Over 1,500 families had signed up for the program by 2023. The information they supplied has been essential. Doctors have benefited from learning more about the condition's symptoms, risk factors, and more effective treatment options. The Ritter rules are another product of the Foundation. These easy-to-follow, life-saving guidelines will help people spot and respond quickly to aortic dissection symptoms. More than 2 decades later, in 2025, Amy Yazbek hasn't slowed down. Her fight continues, not just in Ritter's memory, but to save lives, she said on the Foundation's website.